Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Fireside Chat. My name is Bill Wald. I'm the Executive Director of the Chimney Safety Institute of America. And I'm filling in this evening for our president, Tommy Nelms, who has a little sickness in his family. And so Tommy can't be with us tonight, but we wish him the best and his family. And tonight's topic is going to be very consumer oriented. It's going to be home planning, selling, and buying. And I have the distinct pleasure of our guest today being Dave Danz, who's with Carpenter Realtors here in Avon, Indiana. But Carpenter, so you know, is all over Indiana. I can have Dave explain that a little bit more. But tonight we're going to be talking about the selling and buying process and how chimneys are involved with that, and what you have to look for, what your realtors should look for. But understand they're not a chimney expert. They are not a CSIA certified chimney sweep. And that's where chimney sweeps come in, is when there could be a possible problem with your fireplace. Now, again, as a consumer, remember, you are intentionally starting a fire in your home. So if you're a new buyer or if you're selling and you're looking at homes, it's good to understand that that firebox, that fireplace, you will be intentionally starting a fire in your home. And there's consequences to that if your fireplace is not up to par. Real quick, I want to explain very, very quickly the real estate industry so you understand, because we get people on this from all over the country. And just so everybody knows, the real estate regulations in each state are very different. However, in each state, the realtors are regulated. They are licensed by the state. And the state has a realtor board and a separate education board for real estate. And then realtors go and join their local board. Then through that, they become a part of their state board and then part of the National Association of Realtors. So it's a very regulated business for licensure as a realtor, as the CSIA CCS is a very tough thing to get. So is a real estate license. And as the CSIA CCS certified chimney sweep, once you get that certification, just like a realtor, you don't want to get rid of it because it's tough to get it back. So just a brief understanding of why realtors are important to you as a home buyer or a home seller. So again, I have the honor of welcoming Dave here. Dave and I know each other. I did say that earlier when we were talking off camera that when Dave and I get together, usually one of us is late to a meeting because we can go on and on about real estate.
And we drink a lot of coffee.
And but we're not going to do that tonight. We're going to be very specific. So Dave, welcome.
Thank you, Bill.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about Carpenter and what your over 20 years of experience as a realtor?
Okay, so Carpenter Realtors is a very large company with, I think, approaching 40 offices in central Indiana, stretched out, 100 miles each direction, probably more than that. We have an agent population of about 650 agents. We'll do $1.5 billion in terms of gross sales this year. I've been doing it for 22 years. Been managing offices, one before this and the one I'm in now, for probably 20 of those 22 years. I manage an office here in Avon on the west side of Indianapolis with about 20 agents right now.
That's it. And I have to say, Dave, as I said earlier, you have been a mentor to me and a coach to learn the real estate industry, because as some people know, I come from that background, but I don't come from Indiana. So to learn the regulations is you've got to have someone like a Dave to really help you out to understand the regulations because they're all different.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the home buyer and home seller, Dave.
Okay.
You know, what should a individual, a consumer, look for in a realtor?
Okay. Well, first of all, does your realtor have another job?
Right.
There's an awful lot of people that do this. I hate this term, on the side. I'm not a big fan of that. You wouldn't be a big fan of a chimney sweep who does it on the side.
Right.
And we kind of feel the same way. When you're looking to hire an agent, you want a professional. After all, it's probably the biggest investment you've ever had. Most people, their home is everything. Whether they're buying a new home or selling their current home, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you don't want somebody that was bagging groceries until 2, and then they went home and put on a tie and came out to sell your house. Beyond that, every company, there's all kinds of companies out there, many that are very small. This market has been so easy for people to make money in over the last 4 or 5 years. There's an awful lot of, we call them dandelions, that just pop up with no training, no support, no background. And, be careful of who you hire. Make sure they have that experience. Make sure they have a company that can back them up. If I mess up, if I make a mistake, you want to know that I got a company that can come in on a white horse and rescue a situation and cut a big fat check if necessary. We don't like to do that, but an awful lot of these smaller companies have no resources. I don't know. Choose an agent you can communicate with. Sometimes things get ugly. Even in the best transactions, things get ugly. You better be able to communicate well.
Right.
Have that kind
Absolutely.
of relationship.
Dave, when it comes to the chimney sweep world, and I was fascinated because you knew the levels, the inspection levels we were talking about. We discussed that. But when somebody is going through a home with their realtor, and a chimney is involved, or some people have those fire stoves, pellets, or whatever, and they start asking questions. What do you tell them about the fireplace as a realtor, or the stove, or whatever they have in that home?
Sure, be happy to share that. So when I have a client, when I have a buyer, we usually do a buyer counseling session before we even get started. And part of that spiel is that if we're going to go into a house that has a fireplace, wood burning stove, any such thing, that I'm going to now ask my client to prepare themselves to pay for 2 inspections. Pretty much everybody understands the primary home inspection. Most buyers leave it to their general home inspector to determine whether or not the chimney's safe. Now,
right.
I've been doing this a long time. I can't even tell you, hundreds and hundreds of inspections. And you will see the inspector doing his best, lay on his back and look up the chimney with a flashlight and determine if he sees anything. And that's the level of inspection you get. And here's what I tell my buyers. That's not what you want. You need what, I hope I use the right language because I'm not a.
It's okay. Yeah.
But they need somebody to come out and do what I believe is called a level 2 inspection.
Right.
Yes. That chimney that chimney can be very, very clean. Okay. May not have been used in years or maybe ever. And you're looking in the firebox and it looks okay. But it could have had water intrusion over years, any such thing. and there might be significant damage in the flue that's you can't see laying there on your back with a flashlight. So I tell them they need to have somebody on the roof with a camera, takes pictures, and makes recommendations. Now, usually they clean it at the same time. It's an affordable inspection. They're not terribly expensive. But if something goes wrong, if they don't get that checked and later there's a problem, well, first of all, beyond the obvious safety issues, second is the cost of the repair. Most chimneys, I think I've only ever had one chimney ever that needed completely dismantled, exterior masonry, everything. Most of the time, yeah, and it was this year. It was a big deal. Yep. But most of the time, you guys, as you guys know, most damage can be repaired. If it can't be repaired, it can be sleeved, whatever. But I tell my clients, I prep my buyers either at a pre-counseling session before we go out, or when we're in the home. Tell them, okay, so I know you're anticipating $450 home inspection, but on this house, I'm going to strongly recommend you get 2 inspections. There's a timing challenge with that, as chimney sweeps, at least in our area, can sometimes be a challenge to get them because they're booked up. So on day one, once we get a purchase agreement, we're going to order our regular inspection and we're going to call for a chimney inspection. Now, can they refuse? Sure. But I cover my behind pretty well and make sure that's documented, that I told you so. If you got a $4,000 bill coming up in the fall when you got problems, it's not on me.
Right. That's exactly it. So on the seller side, though, have you seen, there are some people who don't disclose that they have chimney problems, but as a realtor, just walking through, you can see the flame, the blackness on it, or it look outside and see the chimney bricks coming apart and things like that. How do you deal with that when you see, as a realtor, and you working with a seller and you start noticing some of these things and they basically don't say anything about it to you?
Yeah, most sellers will tell you right off the bat how often they use the fireplace, and they say, you had any problems? And they go, not that I know of. Well, most sellers will not get an inspection prior to listing a property. And I'm actually okay with that. It's kind of a buyer beware thing.
Right.
They have to disclose, a seller has to disclose, at least in Indiana, is required to disclose all known defects. They are not required to discover defects. So in Indiana, the seller has no legal obligation to call a chimney sweep out to have their fireplace inspected. I do tell my sellers that if they have any guess whatsoever that there's a problem, we need to delve into it. Otherwise, I don't encourage my sellers to go looking for problems that they don't know of.
Okay.
It's all on the buyer. I put all the pressure on the buyer.
Okay. So, this has been a very interesting market. And as you know, and I know, months ago, people were buying homes without inspections, paying $30,000, $40,000 over the asking price, and their appraisal came in, not even close to what they were paying for it.
Yeah.
What do you tell your sellers or your buyers, well, specifically your buyers, what do you tell them when they're saying, well, I don't want to do any inspections. I'll pay full price and not worry about it, and just risk it all? What were you telling them in that kind of market environment that was available at that time?
I have a form that I have them sign that says I told them that they need to have an inspection. And if they refuse, I type on that form that buyer has declined to do any inspections. And you're right. I experienced that myself with several buyers. And depending on the buyer, you know, you have to remember in real estate, the transactions between the buyer and the seller, not between the two realtors. So
Right.
I only have a certain amount of influence I can exert on that. But if I have a buyer that has the financial wherewithal to repair a chimney if we find issues later, and they refuse to do an inspection, I sleep pretty well at night, knowing that if they have a problem, they can fix it. We have a discussion about the danger of fireplaces. I always do that. That, you know, you could be inheriting a big problem. But in the past 3 years or so, a lot of buyers say, you know what, we'll take it if we have a problem later, or we'll inspect it later. Sometimes they say that. My own son bought a house and declined to have a chimney inspection done. He had it done after he moved in, which was fine. I was okay with that. Had it inspected and everything was fine. But he was prepared to take on the financial risk of damage if necessary.
Dave, you know, and we're now talking about homes and things like that, but how do you work with clients that are getting condos? And there's a condo association and there's a fireplace in the condo association, and you're dealing with a whole condo board or a townhome, which is the same. It's a condo association with even a townhome. And there's problems on the outside of it, which is not the buyer's responsibility because it's mostly inside. How do you work with those kind of clients?
Okay, we've had those. Just had one actually recently, firsthand, and the whole development had issues with spalling on the outside of chimneys. You guys have seen that's pretty common. And in that particular case, we asked the seller to submit a repair request to the HOA because it's the HOA's responsibility to do the exterior work.
Right.
And the HOA came back, as I recall, they were okay with signing that, but ultimately it made kind of big news when they determined that the entire complex, all of the chimneys in the complex had to be done, and it was a major assessment that was added. But so probably got off track there a little bit. And whether it's fireplace or any other exterior issue with a condo, we want the seller to provide proof that they've put in the request for the repair. And then it's up to the condo association to follow through.
And do you frequently see that those condo associations or those HOAs do that? And or have you had any experiences where they just ignore it and move on because they can?
No, I've not, because they have a legal responsibility, and I can't say I've had much issue with them doing repairs. Now, if you're asking for something ridiculous,
right.
But no, the situations I run into are loose hose bibs, chimneys, spalling bricks, things like that. And I've had pretty good luck with that, actually.
That's good to know, because when people do invest, in a condo or a townhouse, and, the exterior is not their responsibility, just the interior.
That's right.
It becomes a whole nother issue, and
That's
you're
correct.
involving another third party, and, there's more forms, as you know, that you got to go through.
Yep, that is correct.
What do you see within the industry right now for the consumer that go out there and look, and they're looking at homes? And as you said, there's been many people who have refused inspections, but you've told them to do it. Are you seeing that people are becoming more educated about their certified sweeps and getting their chimneys taken care of, or not?
I'm afraid not.
Okay.
The way I handle my buyers, I don't think that's common throughout our industry. There's there's a there's a situation with, I want to say this carefully. An agent a buyer's agent is motivated to get a deal to close.
Okay.
And you don't close, you don't eat, right?
Right.
And I do a lot of business. If I didn't close, it's okay. I'll close another one later in the week. But a lot of people aren't in that situation. And to call a second level inspector out to look for issues in the chimney might not be in the realtor's best interest. We all hope that all realtors work in the client's best interest.
Correct.
But I don't hear much when it comes to chimneys. I am just a really firm believer that a buyer has to be pushed really hard to call for a second level inspection or a second inspection, chimney sweep instead of a just your general guy. That's the only. I don't tell them that they have to call a roofer or a plumber or an electrician. I'm okay with the general, but the chimney is an exception to that. And I'm afraid I don't see a lot of that out there. I think most rely on their general home inspector.
Well, okay. And Dave, and you and I have had this discussion. What can we do in the chimney industry, the chimney safety industry? What can we do more to make sure that the consumer and the buyers and sellers are much more aware of that? Where do we need to do more consumer public relations? How do you think we can help to get the consumer to understand that?
Yeah. Any kind of public campaign to educate consumers, but probably easier to educate realtors.
Yeah.
It would be difficult for you to do some kind of mass media to educate consumers on the need. But realtors, I think they need to understand, especially a lot of the new people. There's so many people out there that are new, and real estate has been like on meth for the last 3 years, around 100 miles an hour, right? But I wish more. Like, I'll give you an example. All right, I get inspectors, all kinds of people call on me all the time wanting to do promotional stuff in my office. Come in, put on a presentation, lunch and learn, whatever you want to call it. You know how many chimney sweeps have ever asked to come in here to present to my office? And I've been doing this 22 years. It's never happened.
Interesting. Okay.
It's never happened. I think a lot of people probably don't know how affordable a chimney sweep is.
Right.
A lot of people don't have any idea that a chimney's not just a hole going up the flue, right? I think maybe more could be done reaching out to your local, the realtors that you come in contact with. Look them up. I'm going to tell you this. A lot of real estate offices are looking for people to come in and do a demonstration.
Okay. There we go.
Real estate offices, everybody holds sales meetings on Tuesday mornings. That's a big thing, right?
Yeah.
What does that mean as a manager? Sometime before Tuesday, I got to put together an agenda and come up with something kind of interesting, right? And a guest speaker fills that void pretty quick. I think chimney sweeps in whatever market could approach real estate offices and ask to come in, talk about the dangers, the liability, the affordability. That's what I'd like to see.
And the fact that by bringing in a sweep and talk about it, sweeps really save people's lives. I mean, if somebody leaves their fireplace on or their gas on, and they're not educated on how to properly put it out, turn it off, whatever, it really does save lives. And let me go out and tell the consumer something real quick. We at CSIA have developed a curriculum for realtors. We've just finished a curriculum. We've just developed it. The PowerPoints are coming with it. So this is one of the things we're going to beta test, hopefully with Carpenter, is this whole program to educate realtors on what a chimney, the complexity of it in itself. It's Dave said, it's just not a firebox and a stack that goes up. There's much more to it. And I think that's part of our responsibility as, as CSIA, and we're taking that responsibility on consumers to educate you better and to educate those people like the realtors and home inspectors. And we're seeing more home inspectors become CSS chimney sweeps. So I think putting that together is going to be very beneficial, and we can go to your office and do that.
If I'm talking to consumers, if there's a consumer watching this video, and I assume there will be,
Yep.
My best advice is if you're looking at a house, whether your realtor recommends it or not, you make that part of your transaction and you have the chimney inspected. Could save you big money, could save your life, could save your house.
Correct.
If you're a seller, if you own a home and you have a chimney in it and you haven't cleaned it in a while, it's hard to believe people do that, but they do.
You're right.
Yeah. What does a chimney sweep cost? Central India, I don't know what they cost all around. I don't know how big this audience is. Probably $150 to have it inspected. Bill, is that pretty close here?
It's probably a little more. It's probably more than that, depending on what level inspection they're having done.
Okay.
And the region of the country.
Let's say it's $250. All right. And you got a $350,000 house and 3 kids and a dog and your wife that live in that house, right?
Right.
It's not a big deal.
Right. You're going to save their lives.
Yeah.
And Jack Delozer here said, "Thank you, Dave, for being educated and ethical." And I think that's vitally, vitally important. And that's what I love about Dave is that, he is an ethical realtor. Oh, yeah. And he influences all his agents to be that same way. And so just thank you, Jack, because he is definitely that type of realtor and just a good human being.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that.
This is, I think the bottom line to this is, ladies and gentlemen, as consumers, when you go out to sell or buy a home, ask your realtor some questions, as Dave said. How much experience do you have? Do you know about these kind of things? Do you know about resources that we can tap into if we find that there is a problem with the house, or even after we buy it and we didn't know? So your realtor is your friend. They're going to help you make the biggest investment in your life. And your chimney sweep, who's going to come in and clean out your chimney, your CSI certified chimney sweep, who's going to fix that chimney or clean it out, in the end is probably going to save your family, your life from a possible fire. And you know what? Let's face it, your family's worth whatever it costs to be able to do that.
Can I add one thing to that?
You go right ahead, Dave.
You're going to move into the house. I'm talking to consumers now. You're going to move into the house and you're afraid of losing the deal if you find out there's a problem with the chimney. You put blinders on and you go, you know what? I'll just never use that chimney. It's a fair statement. And when you go to move in 5 years, that next buyer is probably not going to be cool with that. And now you're going to inherit a problem that you could have fixed before you bought the house. You might have been able to negotiate those repairs. I can't overstate the importance of having a second inspection when you buy your house. And that second inspection is your chimney.
And with that, Dave, I can't thank you enough. I mean, you've helped educate the consumer with us tonight about chimneys. I consider you a friend and a mentor. I've learned a ton from you since I met you here in Indiana. And, you know, I have tons of questions on my Indiana real estate test I have to go through. And the company you come from is just a great company. And so with Carpenter Realtors. So I appreciate everything that you do, Dave. I appreciate your honesty and your ethics. I think it is a premier example for any realtor across the country of having my privilege of having someone to know like you. So
I appreciate that. I hope we've helped people.
Right.
Yeah.
And so's your chimney sweep. That's what they're doing. They're there to help and answer your questions. And especially if you're buying a home, it's better to know ahead of time if it's going to cost you 15 grand to fix something and you invest $400, $500, $600. It's going to cost you 15 than when you've already bought the house and then boom, you get a $15,000 bill and you're all upset at your realtor and yourself.
That's right.
So on behalf of CSIA, and I thank you, Dave, and we thank the consumers tonight, and join us in a couple of weeks again for the fireside chat. I think Tommy will be back then, our president of CSIA. But for now, thank you, and make sure this is the busy season, consumers. Get a hold of your chimney sweep. When you make that appointment, keep it, because they are stacked up across the nation right now with business. And especially with the holidays coming up, you're going to be using that chimney and you want to get it cleaned as fast as possible. So thank you, everyone. Have a good night and enjoy the holidays.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dave.